Good evening. I'm Rich, and this is Cheap Red Wine. This is the show in which I drink cheap red wine and tell stories. This week's cheap red wine, Mysterio, 2008, oak-aged, symbols that reveal the silent wisdom of a magnificent art. That's what it says on the label. Speaking of magnificent art, tonight we're talking about the Beastie Boys. I had the opportunity back in 1987 to see the Beastie Boys as they launched their famed License to Ill tour, playing at the Spectrum America Showcase on April 7th, 1987. I didn't go just for fun. I was a working reporter working for the Temple University newspaper. I was there to review the show. In fact, I had even received this official news release explaining the Beastie Boys and what they were all about. Because at that time, quite frankly, a lot of people didn't really understand the Beastie Boys. So they put out a news release to explain them and get us ready for the show. I sat in the press box, which, as you might imagine, is probably the worst place to see a Beastie Boys show. Because you really want to be down on the floor with your best buddies, spewing beer and obscenities the whole time. And you can't do that in the press box. So there you go. The news release states that the tickets were $14.50 and $15.50. $15.50 and $16.50 on the day of the show. So if you waited until the day of the show to get your tickets, you got kind of ripped off spending that extra dollar. So that's the news release, but I wrote some notes on the back while I was sitting in the press box to describe the show, and I'll read some of them to you now and perhaps explain them as I go if I need to. Beastie Boys, many police in subway, Spectre guards keeping people off the Rocky statue. Back then, the Rocky statue was in front of the Spectrum. Now it's not. Scalpers not selling tickets. I don't know why they weren't selling tickets. Parents dropping concert goers off. Average age, 14. I felt old. I was 22 at the time. Interracial crowd. More girls than I had imagined. Probably some of the wannabes that booed the Beasties when they opened for Madonna. Floor, sea of red Beastie baseball caps. Def Leppard album playing before the show. Twisted Sister, I Wanna Rock. 10 Steps Back. Rick Rubin, I believe, yelled that from the stage, or somebody who looked like him. Move Back, yelled Hurricane, the DJ for the Beastie Boys. Y'all give Philadelphia a bad name. Once you move, we can fix the barricade. I think that was positive reinforcement. Give him a hand. They got the F out of the way. This is for your safety. So apparently there's a crowd control problem that night. Public Enemy. Public Enemy was one of the opening acts that night. Of course, they went on to become a legendary rap act. But at that time, they were opening for the Beastie Boys. Murphy's Law, a hardcore band. They also played that night. So, the Beastie Boys show was pretty entertaining. I enjoyed it from my vantage point in the press box. And then the next day, I think I must have rushed back on the Broad Street subway to the Temple News office and immediately filed my story, because the next day we have Beastie Boys make people sick. I didn't write that banner headline. Somebody else wrote that. I wouldn't have written that. The April 8th Temple News. Now, this Temple News is notable, not only for my Beastie Boys review, but here's a picture of Temple President Peter Liakouris with a caption. President Liakouris tries his hand at making a salad during yesterday's grand opening of the Salad Alley on Park Mall. The grand opening of the Salad Alley on Park Mall, probably as significant a cultural event in Philadelphia that day as the Beastie Boys concert itself. So, here we have my story on page 4. Beastie Boys get ill at Spectrum. I'll just read a little bit to you now. Skinheads, rappers, rockers, b-boys, metalheads, punks, fly girls, preppies, Madonna wannabes, grade school kids, and even a few parents all got ill together at the Spectrum last night. These diverse fans were there to see the 3 guys who could teach Wang Chung a thing or two about having fun. The guys who injected a little irreverence into the Grammy Awards in February. They are the Beastie Boys. And the show they treated fans to last night was nothing less than Tipper Gore's worst nightmare. You know what? I was right. It was nothing less than Tipper Gore's worst nightmare. Anyway, that was my Beastie Boys review. I gave them a good review. It was a fine show. It was a cultural watershed event, I guess you could say. These days, the Beastie Boys are all fine, upstanding, middle-aged men, of course. And I was glad to be there that night. But still kind of wishing I was on the floor for the show and maybe not in the press box. I think that's it for tonight. I'll catch you next week. I'm going to do some holiday-themed shows in the near future. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for your support. Thanks for your support.